Hello everybody, welcome to the channel. Today I think we're gonna try and do something a little unconventional. I've seen a bunch of videos like this on other subjects, and I haven't seen anything sort of disc golf related be done in this fashion. I understand that it might not actually, meet it might not adapt to disc golf as efficiently as it does to other things, but today what I would like to do with you guys is sort of form a tier list for the existing Innova molds that are being produced. From what I found, this is the discs that are included in this tier list are going to be strictly pulled from Innova's website, with the exception of two. I noticed that the Croc and the Firefly were not on Innova's website at the time of recording, so I just threw those in there because, they're new additions and a lot of people are using them. So, without further ado, let's just sort of get into the tier list, the tiers themselves, and we'll just go down the list as efficiently as possible. So, as it stands, I made this little thing. There are currently 5 criteria, or 5 existing tiers. There's like mandatory discs, ones that I think that basically everyone should have in their bag. Very good choices, which mean that there are other very good options out there, but Innova has a mold. The mold would be able to slot into your bag for that particular type of shot. Below that would be could bag it, which is like, okay, well, maybe it's a pretty good option, but either another brand has like a better option, or it's pretty niche thing that you wouldn't use all that often. Then there's the niche picks, which are either just like very unreliable or basically just kind of meme discs. And then there's other ones that are just not worth bagging whatsoever, where it's like, well, there's no reason to have it, or just not very good in general. And then lastly, there's the haven't thrown it tier, which unfortunately quite a few of these discs are going to land in. I've played for a few years, but I can honestly tell you in my heart of hearts, I have not thrown all 103 of these molds, and I don't think there are many people in the world that have. But without any further ado, let's get straight into this tier list. So starting straight from the top, we have the Arrow, which we're starting out hot with. I haven't thrown it at all. Next is the Ape. Now, the Ape, I've only had a couple of them. The first one I actually found in a bush, but but I love the feel of it. They're super consistent, very overstable. It's not something that you would use a ton of times in a round, but I actually genuinely loved mine whenever I had it. Do I think that it's the best disc for that type of shot? No, not necessarily, but you definitely could use it in your bag. So I think we'll try and slap that and could bag it just as a good place to start. The Archangel, not a lot of people can use them. I loved mine. I've had a couple of them, and I recommend them to people that have like really, really low arm speeds. The Archangel was a pretty good disc for me. It was usable. They're pretty reliable. You know exactly what they're going to do if you understand that they're like stupidly flippy and really unstable. So it's a niche pick, but I wouldn't say it's not worth bagging if you have like a pretty low arm speed. The Arkin, I haven't thrown. I haven't thrown the Atlas. I have thrown the AVR Driver. The AVR Driver is one of those discs because it's the same thing basically as the KC Pro and the JK and the Yeti. It's the same mold. I genuinely adore this disc for throwing and putting. So, I don't know. I think it's a very good choice out of Innova's lineup. It's one of the more solid discs, and I think they're rather underutilized, personally. The AVR 3, unfortunately, I have not thrown it. The AVR, the regular AVR, big fan of the regular AVR, but I've, always preferred the beaded counterpart, or like the big bead AVRs. Regardless, it is a very good choice. A lot of people would say that that's a mandatory disc if you throw Innova, but personally, I think they have better putters in their lineup, and even though it is like a staple that most other putters are modeled after, I think the AVR is sort of going by the wayside. Personally, that might be a pretty hot take, but it's a very, very solid choice. I just don't think it's the best one in Innova's lineup. The AVR X3 is another one I haven't thrown. AVR 3 and AVR X3, I'm ashamed to say that I haven't thrown either, but that's only because I usually throw zones and harps and things of that nature. I do throw one overstable Innova disc that is a putter slash mid type of disc, but we'll get to that one slightly later on. The Banshee I haven't thrown. The Beast is kind of like it's like a longer Valkyrie, but it's for people that can't quite throw like a Wraith or a Destroyer. It's basically for nice flex shots, and I find that they're pretty easy to throw. I don't think they're the most reliable thing in the world, and of the ones that I've owned, they haven't been tremendously consistent. So I would say that you could it's between very good and you could bag it. I would say you could bag it because I think there are better options out there on the market. The Birdie I haven't thrown. The Boss is basically what I like to think of as what the Destroyer could be, really. Every Boss I've had is exactly the same. They're super consistent, and for that reason I would rate it higher than the Destroyer, frankly, just on that criteria alone. But the Boss isn't something that basically anyone could bag. So as it stands, I'd say, I don't know, as a distance driver goes, it's a very good choice. It's a very good choice. It is what it is. It's a very good one. The Bullfrog, a new addition to Innova's lineup. I really like the feel of the Bullfrog as a thrower and a putter. As a putter, as a thrower, it has like no glide whatsoever, and as a putter, it's basically dead straight. I think it's a very good choice. If you like a beaded putter, I think it's second only to Innova's KC Pro AVRs or the Yetis in terms of Innova's lineup. But with that being said, I think there are better options than the Bullfrog. It's one of those things you could bag it, but I don't think it's the best option out of Innova's lineup. The Cheetah I have not thrown. The AVR Classic, or the Classic AVR. I personally prefer the Classic AVR over the regular AVR, both as a putter and a thrower. I just like the feel of them better. The plastic is just a little bit stiffer, and I just feel shots are more confident with the Classic AVR. I don't personally bag one, but it's a very solid choice, so I would put it up there as very good choices. The Cobra I unfortunately have not thrown. The Colossus, as a speed 14, I don't think a lot of people should be throwing these, even though this one has a significant amount of high-speed turn. The Colossus is an okay choice. I don't think it's tremendously reliable, unfortunately, so unless you're throwing like Tailwind or like have a lower arm speed and want something like it, I just think there's too many other options that would do what this disc does. So unless you have like crazy arm speed, you're not going to utilize the full potential of this disc, and so for that reason I think it's sort of a niche pick. The Colt I actually really like the Colt, frankly. It's a VTEC disc, but I mean, some people will find that grip to be a little bit weird. I prefer it for this specific disc, but as a thrower and a putter, I don't think it's on the same level as the AVR or even the Bullfrog, so I'd say it's a rather niche pick in that regard. The Corvette I'm going to put as niche pick, sort of for the same reasons as the Colossus. Not a lot of people can utilize its full potential, and there are other discs that do what it does, but in my opinion, better. The Coyote I have not thrown. Now the Star, or the Croc, the new Croc. This is a disc that I have, and I love it. And since I've owned it, I find myself going for the Croc more than I go for my zones, which is actually saying quite a lot. I find them to be more consistent than the zones. I can't throw it forehand, though. I don't think it's tremendously comfortable for throwing a forehand. I do think it's the best out of the Gator, Cayman, Croc little lineup that Innova has. So I'm going to say the Croc is under a very good choice. I genuinely adore that disc, and it's fantastic. So the Crow I have not thrown. The Daedalus is another disc I unfortunately have not thrown. I haven't thrown a dart, unfortunately. I will have to. I know it's one of those discs that's a staple in a lot of people's bags. I just unfortunately haven't picked one up, so I'll have to in the future. Now we come to one of the big boys, the Destroyer. I think if you were to ask the vast majority of people, the Destroyer is probably the best driver Innova makes, if not the best disc Innova makes, if not the best disc, period. A lot of people just swear that by them, but I have a lot of gripes with the Destroyer, whenever you find yourself a good one, they're extremely comfortable in the hand. You know exactly what they're going to do. But the problem is you can't reliably get two destroyers that are basically the same. It's virtually impossible to find them. So, like, it's a very good choice, but the thing that keeps it from being... Okay, essentially, if you're an Innova thrower, I want to say it's mandatory, but I'm going to drop it down to a very good choice. Only because... Or actually, you know what? I'm going to say just down to could bag it. Only on account of the fact that destroyers are so variable and inconsistent whenever you're buying them. You never know exactly what you're going to get. And so I'm not going to say that you need one just for that reason. The Dominator, I have not thrown. The Dragon, I had one given to me as a gift. I mean, they're 150 grams, and they're strictly meant to be thrown on water holes. They float. But the thing is, even with, like, low arm speeds, these things are basically unusable. They're so understable. I don't personally think they're worth bagging. There are better options if you want floating discs, in my personal opinion. The Eagle is another... like, big Innova disc that I have not thrown. So that's going to go and haven't thrown it. Now we have the Firebird, which everyone knows about. It's like one of the staples of Innova's lineup. You know exactly what they're going to do right out of the box, and as they beat in, they almost just get better over time. So I don't think there's any other disc from any other company that does what the Firebird does better than the Firebird and feels better in the hand. So I think if you're needing something in that slot, it's basically mandatory. The Firefly, I have not thrown. The Firestorm, I have not thrown. Unfortunately, the FL, I have not thrown, nor the Foxbat, nor the Gator, nor the Gazelle. The Groove I have thrown. It's really understable, and I don't really like the feel of it. There are a lot of other understable discs that I feel would meet this slot better than the Groove does. So I'll throw a niche pick, just because you could use it, but I think other discs fill this slot much better than it does. The Hydra is, I think, the only disc that Innova makes that's like a floating disc that is worth bagging. It actually feels okay in the hand. The plastic is really grippy, so even if it's wet, you can throw with it. You could even putt with it if you want, and it feels great. So it may not be the most popular. I could say could bag it. It's not like the most popular putter in the world, but I could see people using it, and it floats. So I mean, there's also that additional utility as well. Okay, so the JK AVRs, same mold as the AVR driver and Yeti Pro and KC Pro. I think of the Big Bead AVR molds, it's the weakest choice. I know a lot of people will use these for throwing. I don't very much like them for putting. I just don't like the feel of the plastic. A lot of other people do. I put it under could bag it because I don't quite like it for putting as much as the Yetis or the KCs, and I don't like it for throwing as much as the KCs or the AVR drivers. But if you like the feel of like a really loose sort of tacky plastic, then it's an excellent choice. The Katana. Okay, so the Katana is like a really understable disc. A high speed, like wide rim driver. You could use them for rollers if you wanted. I've had a couple of them. I don't think they're tremendously consistent personally, and I think Innova has better options if you want an understable driver just for distance whenever you have like lower arm speed. So personally, for me, it's kind of a niche choice. It's not really something that I see a lot of people bagging, and I don't see much reason to when given the other options. So I guess it'll sit there under niche pick. Okay, the KC Pro AVR. In my personal opinion, the best putter Innova has. I'm going to put it under very good choice because obviously other brands have similar putters that do basically the same thing, and some could argue that they do them better. I think this is the best putter Innova has in the best plastic that Innova has for putters. So the KC Pro AVR is a very good choice. The only counter argument that I have for it not being mandatory is the fact that the Judge and the Wizard exist, which are both stellar molds, and I think that those are, those put up a deal of trouble for arguing that the KC Pro is the best out there. The King Cobra. I have a couple of these, and I like the feel of them almost better than I like the feeling of the rock. They're like a slightly more shallow rock, or rock 3. I think that the rock lineup is a better option if you're looking something in that general area. So I won't say it's, I'd say it's a very good choice personally, but it's one of those things that you could bag, but I think Innova has better options. The Star Kite I have not thrown. The Crate I have not thrown. The Leopard 3. I think the Leopard 3 is a very good choice, frankly. As a fairway driver, as just a workable fairway driver, the Leopard 3, it's hard to beat if you need just like a straight to understable type disc. From beginners to advanced players, anyone can basically use the one to do any kind of line. And the same sort of goes for the Leopard, but slightly slower shots. I think both of those are excellent choices. The Lion I have not had the chance to throw yet. The Mako I have not thrown, but the Mako 3. I have several of these, and I honestly think you'd be hard pressed to find a straighter, like more workable mid-range than the Mako 3. You can do whatever angle you want on it, any line you want on it, and you know pretty much exactly what it's going to do, unless of course you're trying to throw it in a wind. That just doesn't work out. I think the Mako 3 is a very good choice in Innova's lineup. The Mamba I have not had the chance to throw, nor the Manta, nor the Max, nor the Mirage, nor the Monarch. The Monster I have also not had a chance to throw, nor the Mystere. Okay. The Nova. The putter mold, it's one of the only putters that I find that you can strictly throw but not putt with. Aside from like your overstable putters like the Croc and the Zone and Harp and everything. The Nova is probably the single like straightest flying putter that I think I've ever laid hands on. The grip of it is just a tad bit weird, but whenever you're throwing these things, they do exactly what you think they're going to do. Like they hold the exact line you release them on. There's no fade, there's no turn, and whenever it hits the ground, it just stops. So I think from Innova's lineup, that's pretty much the best choice you're gonna get for a throwing putter, personally. I'm almost inclined to say that it's mandatory, but no, we're gonna say it is, because I seriously don't think you're going to find another putter that does exactly what the Nova does in the market. It's a fantastic disc. The Orc I have not thrown. The Panther I have not thrown. The Pig I have thrown, and as overstable like approach discs go, I'm not a huge fan of it. I know a lot of people have picked up on it because Ricky chose this disc to be his Tour Series disc this past year, and he's like been killing it with this thing. I don't like the feel of the Pig at all. I think as thumb track overstable putters go, it's not even the best one in Innova's lineup. I'll throw it in could bag it. It's an okay choice. I personally wouldn't bag one, but I understand the merits of it, and I think they're okay. The Polecat I haven't thrown. The Rat. I think the Rat is actually a severely underrated disc. I understand that initially this was Innova trying to clone the Zone in terms of like feel, which is probably why it feels so fantastic forehanding and backhanding the thing. But it flies for me similar to kind of like a Rock 3, but with less like flip. There's like no turn to it, but it has the same fade. So this thing is super reliable. It doesn't dive to the ground. It's nice and glidey. You get a lot of speed out of it. I think it's one of Innova's better mid-ranges to date, even though it wasn't an exact clone like they want it to be of the Zone. The Rhino is exactly what I was talking about whenever I said the Pig isn't the best sort of thumb track over stable putter in Innova's lineup. I want to say if you want a thumb track like putter or something with that like blocky feel, the Rhino is a much better option. I like the feel of this thing way better in the hand, but by that same token, I don't think it's as good as the Croc. I don't think it's the best overstable putter in Innova's lineup or approach disc. So for that reason, I mean, it's anywhere between very good choices and could bag it. I'm gonna say it's a very good choice, just because it feels better than the pig, and I think it could slot into a lot of people's bags. The Roadrunner. The Roadrunner is one of those discs where it's like immediately easy to roll them. If you need like just massive turnover shots or anything of that nature, where it's like, okay, I need this to get to the ground and like cut right, or if you need something to hold a turnover or like an ante-line for a really long time, this is an excellent disc for that type of shot. So the Roadrunner, I'd say, is a very good choice. It's an excellent disc. So the rock, there's just your standard rock. I personally think the rock it probably is the best mid-range that Innova makes to date. I really think so. I mean, even in just DX Plastic, where you have to switch them out constantly, you know exactly what the rock's gonna do. They're really reliable. They feel great in the hand. I don't forehand them very frequently, but they feel fantastic. They fly fantastic, and they're very reliable discs. So I said they're a very good choice. The Rock Plus I haven't thrown. The Rock X3 I have thrown, but I am not a massive fan of it. So the Rock X3 I'm going to put as a... You could bag it. I don't see any reason to bag it over the Rock 3, personally. Actually, no, this is Rock 3. The Rock 3 I love, but the problem is with the past couple years is some of the Rock 3s are like really flippy. Some of them will hold like the angle that you start them out on, but some will flip, and some will even like flip to flex, and in the wind I find them like super unreliable. So as much as I want to put the Rock 3 in very good choice, I'll put it under could bag it, just because of the recent unreliability in Innova's like production. The Savant I haven't thrown. The Shark 3. I've had quite a few Shark 3s. I don't like the feel of them quite as much as I like the Rock. And for that reason, I mean, they fly pretty similar to the Rock. They're basically just... They're pretty similar to each other. They just have a little bit more torque resistance for more beginner players. The Shark 3, I'm going to say you could bag it. I don't think it's as good as the Rocks, even the Rock 3, personally. I could see you using them. I don't think the Shark 3 is as good as the original Shark, which is like the classic startup disc, which is also what we're going to next, the Shark. I think the Shark is a very good option. I don't think it's as good as the Rock, unfortunately, but I could see someone using it, especially like more beginner players. They're meant to be more torque resistant, so I'm going to say it's a very good choice just for that reason. The Shrike. Okay, so the Shrike, I've had quite a few of them. The problem with Shrikes is you very quickly will realize that you can't throw them in any kind of headwind situation. I mean, it might be a speed 13 disc, but you can't throw it in any kind of wind, unless it's a tailwind, right? I think lower power players will get a lot of extra distance out of these things. I just don't think they're reliable enough to be bagged by everyone. So I would say could bag it just for sheer lack of reliability. Otherwise, it's a very good choice. If I could trust Innova's consistency with their production, I would say the Shrike is a very good choice, but some of them are just a touch too understable for everyone to bag them because you don't know exactly what they're going to do. The Sidewinder I haven't thrown, but it's pretty similar to the Roadrunner, just a tad less understable. The Skeeter I haven't thrown, the Sonic I haven't thrown, Spider I haven't thrown, Starfire I haven't thrown, Stingray I haven't thrown, Stud I haven't thrown. The T-Bird 3. The T-Bird 3, I actually prefer the T-Bird, only because I can find myself being able to forehand and backhand them. They are fantastic discs. They are very workable. They're one of the few Innova molds that I find you can actually know exactly what you're getting whenever you buy the thing. They're very consistent in terms of Innova's production quality. So I think the T-Bird 3 is easily a very good choice for someone. The regular T-Bird, I also think, by that same token, is a very good choice. Basically, everyone could bag one. And I think they're very reliable. What is that? The T-Devil I have not thrown. The T-Rex I also haven't thrown. The Tern is a good disc. To me, it's sort of similar to the Shrike. I like the feel of the Shrike better. but I find the turn to be more consistent, and for that reason, I want to say the turn is a very good choice, especially for people with lower power that are trying to get some extra distance or want something that they can rely on to flip, or if they want to float, like throw turnover shots. So I'm going to put the turn over the Shrike. I know that might be a controversial choice, but I'm going to put the turn over the Shrike just because of consistency, even though I like the feel of the Shrike better. The Thunderbird. Okay, so the Thunderbird is actually a disc that I have a few of them, and I didn't expect to like this thing as much as I do. These things bomb. They are stealth, like they feel fantastic in the hand. You can throw them forehand, you can throw them backhand, and they just move. And I don't think I've found one yet that is like flippy. Whenever you get a Thunderbird, generally I feel like you know what you're getting, and they feel fantastic in the hand. So I want to say the Thunderbird is a very good choice. I want to say it's probably the best fairway driver / distance driver that Innova's made to like in recent history. And I think the Thunderbird style disc is actually going to be like the future of like fairway drivers / distance drivers, like that hybrid. Hey, you could throw anywhere between 300 and 450 with this thing, depending on your skill level. It's like a fantastic disc. The TL3 and the TL. I actually really like both of these discs. They're comparable to the T-Bird and T-Bird 3. I love the feel of the TLs, but I personally prefer the T-Birds. Just personally, these things are straight as an arrow though. If you're gonna throw them, the TL3 I like for forehands and backhands, but the TL is basically strictly for backhands. It's slower and a bit more domey. I think both are very good choices, but considering the fact that the T-Bird and T-Bird 3 exist, I want to say these belong under could bag it, because I think personally that the T-Birds are better options. The Valkyrie. So the Valkyrie is... The Valkyrie... I want to say the Valkyrie is a very good choice. For people that are lower power players, they can't throw a Wraith or Destroyer or something, the Valkyrie is excellent. It's like free distance, basically. And classically, it was one of the better choices in Innova's lineup before they had the bigger distance or bigger high-speed drivers. So the Valkyrie is a good choice for either beginner players or people that are working on their form. The V Cobra, I have not had the chance to throw. The Viking, I haven't thrown, nor the Viper. Well, I had the V-Rock. I do not like the feel of the V-Rock at all. I get it's a niche pick, frankly. I don't see many people throwing them, and I don't like the feel of them very much. It doesn't do anything that another disc does better. So there's that. I haven't thrown the Vulcan. The Wahoo I've thrown and I hated it. Like I felt the the plastic feels really good in your hand, but of the ones that I've thrown, and I've thrown like 4 or 5 of them, you never know what they're gonna do. Sometimes it'll hold a hyzer, and sometimes it'll just completely flip over on you. And you don't even have to beat them up at all. It's just you never know what is gonna happen when you let the thing go. And for that reason, I don't think they're worth bagging. The Whale I haven't thrown, but it's similar to an AVR. The Whippet I have not had the chance to throw. The Wolf is a very understable like thumb track mid-range. I actually really like this disc personally. It's not the most reliable thing in the world, and the fact that they only produce it in DX plastic means that you can't really bag one for too long. You can't really get them anywhere unless you get them online, but like I really like the feel of the Wolf personally. But seeing as how you can only get it in DX plastic, and that means you can't hold on to it very long because it's already super understable as is, it's a pretty niche pick. The Wombat 3 I have not thrown, nor have I thrown the Wombat. And now we come to my favorite disc in Innova's lineup, which is the Wraith. If there was any one disc that I would say is mandatory out of Innova's lineup, well, I guess there are 3. But one of them is the Wraith. It's basically what everyone wants a destroyer to be, but it's for people that can't throw destroyers, or people that can throw destroyers and want something a bit more reliable. I like the feel of the Wraith. I like the flight of the Wraith. I have 6 of them most of the time in my bag. And if there was any one driver I would say is mandatory out of Innova's lineup, it is the Wraith, hands down. I have not thrown the X-Cow. I have not thrown the XD. And that leaves our last disc, which is the Yeti Pro AVR. As I've said before, I like the Big Beat AVR mold. I think the Yeti Pro is the best for putting, not necessarily the best for throwing, simply because I like the concavity of the flight plate. You can really just get your thumb into it and like very get a nice consistent release out of these things. The fade is slightly less than with the KC Pros or the JKs or the AVR drivers. So for throwing, they're more of a straight shooter, so I wouldn't throw them too often, but I think overall the Yeti Pro is a very good putter and thrower if that's something that you like. You like the feel of a beaded putter. So, with that, we have tiered the entirety of Innova's mold lineup. I'm sure out of the 103 molds, and I'm ashamed at how many of these I haven't thrown, I'm sure that you guys probably don't agree with all of these choices, and that's totally okay. Leave down in the comment section below which ones you think I got wrong, and I am sure that we will be able to have some kind of agreement about it because, you know, to each their own. I understand that. But this, based on my own personal experience, this is how I rate all of Innova's molds. Hopefully you found this information useful. I thought this kind of video would be interesting. I definitely talked for way too long on the subject, but hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to leave a like down below and maybe even consider subscribing. I hope to be, you know, uploading more disc golf content here pretty soon and pretty regularly in the future. So if you have any suggestions, also be sure to leave those in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully I'll see you again soon. Thank you. Bye.